This program is sponsored by Willamette University.
Today on Your Voice, Your Vote, as dozens of homes burned to the ground this past week in Oregon.
I mean, these fires are not your grandfather's fires, Steve. They're in effect infernos.
My one-on-one interview with Oregon Senator Ron Wyden on the bipartisan bill that aims to reduce future fires. How that works, and will it get support in Congress? Protests in Los Angeles.
What he's doing is trying to divert attention.
Senator Wyden on President Trump's orders to send military troops to L.A. And this. What are you telling your constituents who may be calling you concerned about DOGE's access to their information? My exclusive interview with Oregon's senior senator starts right now.
From Katu and Willamette University, this is Your Voice, Your Vote with Steve Dunn.
Hi, everybody, and thanks for watching on this Sunday, June 15th, and happy Father's Day. It's early in the season, but we're already feeling the devastating effects of the state's hot, dry weather. As of Friday, the fast-moving Rowena wildfire northwest of the Dells has destroyed dozens of homes since it started on Wednesday. At the height of the fire, thousands of people were under some sort of evacuation order in the Columbia River Gorge. Oregon's wildfire dashboard listed more than 24 active fires around the state as of Friday, with more than 9,000 acres burned statewide. For current information on the wildfires, of course, go to Katu.com. I spoke to Oregon Senator Ron Wyden on Wednesday before the Rowena fire was reported regarding the wildfire danger in Oregon. Now, Wyden, who's a Democrat, is sponsoring a bill that he says will reduce future risks. But first, a thank you to Willamette University for sponsoring this program. Here's that interview. Senator Ron Wyden joins me now from Washington, D.C. Good to see you.
Hey, good to be with you.
Oregon already experiencing very hot, dry weather. You know that. How will the federal funding cutbacks impact Oregon this summer when it comes to wildfires?
Well, I asked Doug Burgum, the Secretary of Interior, about that just today in the Energy and Natural Resources Committee. We've been getting projections that particularly in eastern Oregon, it's going to be hotter, it's going to last longer. I mean, these fires are not your grandfather's fires, Steve. They're in effect infernos. You have a lightning strike, something like that. And I said to the Secretary, I need to know that you're going to be there if we're short of resources. And he pledged that he would assist, and I'm going to hold him accountable.
You have introduced bipartisan legislation to support prescribed burns as a way to reduce the wildfire risk. Explain why this is an effective strategy.
I'm seeing Republicans and Democrats, I've got a Republican sponsor on my proposal saying this is the way to go. What a prescribed burn is you basically go in the colder weather months and you work with the community, you talk to all sides, the industry, the environmental folks, the community leaders, and you basically thin out the dead and dying material. And in the process, you make the community safer from having a lot of dead material on the forest floor. It gets dry, somebody throws a match, and you'd have an inferno otherwise. And I'm really proud that I've got bipartisan support for it, and I hope that the Trump people, the Trump administration will support it as well.
Do you see this passing in the current legislative session?
My view is this is the most popular and the proposal that has real bipartisan support, and I think I've got a real good chance that I'm going to pull out all the stops to get this enacted into law.
For days, we've watched the protests taking place in Los Angeles in response to federal immigration sweeps. President Trump ordered thousands of military personnel to be deployed to L.A. He did so without the support of California Governor Gavin Newsom. Trump said the National Guard troops and active duty Marines were needed to protect federal law enforcement and property.
Some of the things you're reading about in Los Angeles, thank goodness we sent out some wonderful National Guard. They've really helped, and a lot of problems they were having out there. They were afraid to do anything, and we sent out the troops, and they've done a fantastic job.
Governor Newsom said the troops weren't necessary. The L.A. Police Department said they could handle the protests and didn't need the help. In an address last Tuesday, Newsom issued a warning, and White House officials pushed back the following day.
What Donald Trump wants most is your fealty, your silence to be complicit in this moment. Do not give in to him.
Right now, it's keeping California safe. If Gavin Newsom isn't going to keep California safe, we are.
Newsom says Trump is putting public safety at risk by bringing in the military. President Trump ordered the National Guard and U.S. Marines to Los Angeles in response to the protests over immigration raids there. Trump said the city would have been, quote, completely obliterated if he had not deployed the Guard. State and local leaders say the military response is not needed. Give me your thoughts on the deployment of the troops to Los Angeles.
Steve, what I can tell you is that Donald Trump has a history at these kinds of moments of trying to take attention away from his political problems. The fact is, he's got this unbelievably unpopular economic package, the biggest set of cuts in Medicaid, which is something that covers something in the vicinity of 1 out of 3 Oregonians. He would make the biggest cut in American history of health care for kids and disabled and seniors in nursing homes. And what he's doing is trying to divert attention. He's got a history, certainly, of generating, conflict, and I understand it. But to me, what he's doing in terms of his real motivation is he's trying to take attention away from this incredibly unpopular economic package, where he's giving huge tax breaks to people at the very top of the economic system and cutting people who need a little bit of help in terms of fighting hunger and the Medicaid program.
You know, there are folks across the country, they watch the TV, they see the cars on fire, the rocks being thrown at police, and they feel that the president is doing the right thing by sending those troops in. What do you say to them?
Well, this is, to me, a decision for governors, number one. And remember, we've got this history in Portland and in Oregon, and I keep coming back to the basic proposition. I've always been a supporter of peaceful protest. I've always been an opponent of violence, and that's the way I will approach this as long as I have the honor of representing Oregon.
How would you like to see congressional Democrats respond to the president's intervention in the LA protests?
What we're doing is talking it through, trying to get details. You asked about pictures of cars burning and the like. I've seen some social media where people are saying those cars come from years ago and are not what the Los Angeles issue is all about. And that's why I have always said that a governor is the commander-in-chief, and that's how we're approaching it.
Do you see the immigration raids that are happening in Los Angeles taking place here in Portland, or are they already, and perhaps we don't know about it?
Again, there are a whole lot of details yet to be addressed, but I think the immigration system is broken. I want a system that, for example, is built around the kind of bipartisan effort we had in the fall of 2024. We had Chris Murphy, a Democrat from Connecticut, James Lankford, a Republican from Oklahoma. We really thought we had an opportunity to make fundamental changes, starting with more security at the border. And Donald Trump came in, he barked, and the Republicans walked away. I thought it was a mistake.
Do you believe the threat of these raids will impact local businesses that depend on the migrant workers?
Well, there's no question that we need workers. And I find, as the ranking Democrat on the Senate Finance Committee, that it used to be that people would come in and they talk about some obscure issue of tax policy. Now the number one concern is workers, and people overwhelmingly want to work, and they want the dignity associated with it.
President Trump has had a lot to say about sanctuary cities and states. Do you think the city of Portland and the state of Oregon will pay a price for being a sanctuary city and state?
I think as long as we as Oregonians come together around core principles like respecting peaceful protest, opposing violence, the commander-in-chief puts those kinds of principles in place, I think people will say that's the best of the Oregon way.
You talked about it a little bit. Let's talk about the president's budget bill. The House approved the bill containing billions of dollars in cuts to Medicaid and the food program called SNAP. What are you hearing from Senate Republicans about proposed changes to that bill? What are they saying?
Well, I'm very hopeful that they're going to see that there's a relationship between these two programs. If you cut particularly for vulnerable people. If you cut food assistance, that can also make them sicker, and then you're going to find problems if you cut off Medicaid. So that's a prescription for a lot of trouble, both in terms of hungry people and healthcare. And I think what's happening is that a lot of senators are going home now and finding how unpopular this Trump economic package is. And in effect, Steve, the Republicans in the United States Senate are trying to cover up what's really going on. We normally have something called a markup, where the Finance Committee, where I'm the ranking Democrat, former chairman, we have a full session where senators can offer alternatives. We have real debate. The Republicans won't have a markup now. I've asked them to do one, and I think it's because they can't defend the indefensible, and they know Americans will be unhappy with their package.
Give me a prediction what will happen to the bill in the Senate.
Well, the Republicans basically consider this almost an existential moment. You know, they want to give these big tax breaks to the people at the top. They want to cut the hunger programs and the Medicaid programs. They're running on it. They're campaigning on it. They control the presidency, the House, and the Senate. This is existential for them. But I can tell you, I've had more than 1,120 town hall meetings. I've seen a lot of unpopular economic programs. This is right up at the top.
I want to talk about DOGE a little bit. U.S. Supreme Court has given DOGE permission to access Social Security data of millions of Americans. A majority of the High Court said DOGE should be allowed to review the data so it can look for waste and fraud and to modernize the outdated systems. What's your reaction to the access that DOGE now has to this information?
Steve, I think this is a horrible decision, and I'm sort of considered the Senate's privacy hawk. This is a dangerous decision. This is going to give Trump's allies access to the home addresses of your viewers, the bank records, your income, and they're going to have access to your personal medical data, such as cancer or HIV diagnosis. I think that this is a prescription for trouble. And if you have this personal information getting into the wrong hands or perhaps another government, I think it's really going to be dangerous, and I'm pulling out all the stops to block it. And Social Security is under the jurisdiction of the Senate Finance Committee, where I'm the ranking Democrat. We're going to do everything we can to counter this ill-advised Supreme Court decision.
They say we'll root out waste and fraud. Do you believe that?
Well, they always say that. That's what they're saying about Medicaid, too. They say they're not cutting, people. Well, the Congressional Budget Office said 16 million people are going to lose insurance coverage, and they say, oh, my goodness, we're not doing that. What we're doing is cutting waste and fraud. That's just way off base and not the facts.
What are you telling your constituents who may be calling you concerned about DOGE's access to their information?
I want them to know, as Oregon's guy on the Senate Finance Committee, which has jurisdiction over Social Security, that I am going to push back on this horrible Supreme Court decision for the reasons that I just outlined, and I'm going to do everything I can to use my history in working on these issues to make sure that their personal data is protected. I'm not going to sit around and just let their personal data go into the hands of somebody in another country.
I understand you plan to run for re-election when your term ends in 2029. That's what I'm hearing. What's your
Steve, let's get the story straight. So you guys asked me and asked me and asked me,
right.
And I said my number one interest is stopping these ill-advised Trump policies, like this economic package I've been talking about.
Right.
And then you guys kept asking, well, are you going to run? Are you going to run? Are you going to run? And I basically ignored it for a while. And then I said, look, I already told you what my big interest is, but since you're asking this question again and again, it is my intention to run.
What's your motivation that keeps you going?
I'm going to leave it at that. I think that this is an enormously important for our state. And as the ranking Democrat on the Senate Finance Committee, I'm in a position to have real influence for our state on these issues we're talking about, like healthcare and forestry and protecting people's privacy. And, I felt that I had an opportunity to be in public service after working almost 7 years as co-director of the Oregon Gray Panthers, and there's a lot to do.
Anything else you want to talk about before we let you go back there?
I covered a lot of ground. We got town hall meetings coming up. In a few days, we're going to be out across the state, and we've had more than 1,120. Nobody had ever done that before, Steve. You ask about kind of our priorities. Nobody had ever made a commitment to have an open town hall meeting in each of Oregon's 36 counties, and I'm very proud that we're now at over 1,120 of them.
Senator Ron Wyden from D.C., I always thank you for your time. Always great to see you.
Good to be with you, Steve.